Yo, Ty Butler in the house. We are here getting it popping on this Friday, talking to you, sitting here in New York City. Looking forward to the New York City Half Marathon this weekend, which, by the way, guys, on my Twitter profile, if you're watching us on Twitter, my bad about that, um, I am fundraising for the Sips and Kicks Foundation. So if you are feeling generous today, it's Friday, it's payday, head to my Twitter, top of the page. You will see pinned to my profile, the Sips and Kicks Foundation link. So any donation is welcome. We are trying to hit our goal of 1250, and we're about $125 short. So hop to the Twitter profile, pinned to the profile. You will see the Sips and Kicks Foundation running the New York City Marathon this coming Sunday. I'm excited about that. I am excited to talk to you about the New York Jets, who have had an eventful week. I had Rich Cimini on the program earlier this week breaking down the Geno Smith trade. I was going to say signing, but they traded for Geno Smith. And I had some mixed feelings about it. One was, and I wanted to be consistent because I dislike in this business when people don't have take consistency. It's like you say one thing and then 2 weeks later your mind is completely changed, and it's not because new information has been presented, which is acceptable. It's just because you forgot the take that you had. And so I was on TV last Saturday night for SNY. I'm gonna be on TV tonight. I think we might be talking basketball, but I was asked about Gino and Carson Wentz, and I was just like, I'm good. I don't want those guys as the quarterback for my football team. And it was simple. For Carson Wentz, he was good a half decade. The last time Wentz was good, 5 years ago. He's often hurt. He's inconsistent. And I just don't think that a serious team can have him as its starting quarterback. Now, if you sign him as a backup, fine. Emergency situation, he's got to come in and, do what he has to do. Cool. But if you are a serious team led by a head coach trying to save his job, the unserious move would be to sign Carson Wentz. Geno Smith, I said, listen, here's the deal. I like Geno. I liked him as a quarterback, and I was actually sad when the Jets got rid of him because I thought, and I guess like looking back on it, I can be considered a Geno Smith stan to some of my family members. But I was like, listen, man, this dude we saw twice fail in New York and is now synonymous with some of like the worst moments, low lights, if you will, of the two organizations. And what the Giants is, they really snapped Eli's Iron Man streak and gave this dude the start in his place. It was embarrassing for Ben McAdoo and ultimately led to his firing. And for the Jets, my man, you got punched in the mouth for $500. You are a professional athlete at the highest level, making millions and millions of dollars. And I'm not trying to get into people's pockets. I'm not pocket watching at all. But some dude decked you because you owed him $500. Like, that's just embarrassing. And this just gets forgotten about. We just don't remember. Um, we just don't remember. That was the story, but probably more significant was no one defended. Like, this is the starting quarterback of a football team, the de facto leader, and he just had no one defending him. Hit me up in the comments, by the way, if you want to chime in. I would love to hear from y'all. Make it a two-way conversation. No one defended him, and so I just thought that was alarming and not the sign of someone we should bring back. But now having a chance to process all the information, I will acknowledge that the one flaw I had, and this is something I actually pride myself on, like when I present a problem, the correct way to address the take and present the take is to have a solution for said problem. And for the Jets, quarterback situation, I had what I thought was the solution. It just was not one that was viable. Because as much as after he had gotten released by Arizona, Kyler Murray just sounded great. Don't have to pay him much. Very talented, high ceiling. Just hope that he can stay healthy and then be consistent. That was going to be the move for me. Problem is, Kyler Murray was never coming to the Jets, especially when you have other situations that are just far superior. Like, why would you not want to go to Minnesota and play for Kevin O'Connell in that system with that talented group? Like, why would you pass up the opportunity to go there or to Atlanta where Tua went? Pittsburgh, I thought, was a better situation for him. And so I landed on not really having a great option. Kirk Cousins just didn't sound like there was mutual interest. And I remember back during this was, I guess, during the holidays, when I was doing the afternoon show on ESPN New York, Kirk Cousins was brought up, and I was just like, I'm good, man. That dude is not the answer. He sunned us last time. I'm cool. So I was like, yo, Andy Dalton, Davis Mills, maybe those non-sexy options could just be a stopgap, knowing that next year is when you're all in for a quarterback. So now we get to Geno Smith, and that just explains like how I got to where I am now, which is, look, maybe it's fun. Because here are what the last 4 years look like for Geno Smith. And we'll do it in order. It is Pro Bowl season, 10-7, fine. And those are all 3 years in Seattle. Gets traded to the Raiders, and outside of Justin Fields, you could argue he was the worst starting quarterback in the league last year. And so the question now becomes, is Geno Smith, this version of him, closer to what we saw those 3 years in Seattle, where twice he was a Pro Bowler, or what we saw last year for the Vegas Raiders? And there was just a lot that went into how bad he was, all the sacks. Genty didn't end up being as great as we thought. And now, certainly not like closing the book on him. I think he's a phenomenal talent, but maybe the game's passed Pete Carroll by, right? One and done with Vegas. And that team overall, the organization, was just a mess. And so it's possible Geno, very, very possible, and I would lean likely Geno Smith is a far better quarterback than he was last year with Vegas. But certainly not the answer for the Jets at quarterback. And for people like me, who I guess have my sights already set on the 2027 draft, just get you further and further away from getting your quarterback. Because if Geno somehow is able to win 6 games next year, now you're in a got to trade up situation to get your quarterback. And I think a lot of people sleep on the fact that, yes, having draft capital is enormous. It's ideal, and it puts you into position where like you can attack if the opportunity presents itself. The problem is you can run into a situation like you're in now. The team ahead of you also needs a quarterback. The team ahead of you likes the same quarterback you had. The Giants had this problem, 2 years ago? All the quarterbacks were going 1, 2, and 3. Caleb, Jaden, Drake. And they couldn't trade up. Last year they had this problem with Cam Ward. Dable loved Cam Ward, couldn't trade up. Now it ends up working out for them. They got really, really fortunate that the other teams that needed a quarterback, like New Orleans, like Pittsburgh, ended up passing on Jackson Dart. So they pounced on him. What did they get to 25 to get him? And it so far has worked out for the Giants, where it looks like they have their franchise quarterback. They now have a head coach in place. And so great. But We have seen multiple times a team win too many games to get the quarterback they want, which brings us to the question I posed in the stream, and that is, hey, does rooting for Jet losses make me a bad fan? Because I got called out on ESPN New York's afternoon show yesterday for rooting for this team to essentially go winless so they can land the number one pick. Now, I'll get a chance to be on ESPN New York on Monday with my man Bart Scott, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So that'll be fun to be able to respond to some of the critics. But I wanted to come on here today and talk to the people. So let's get to the comments. BQE Kid, they are sleeping on Geno. I like him when he came out of West Virginia. Sure enough, man, 2013 draft, Geno. And I guess you could even make the case that of the quarterbacks the Jets have had since 2013, Geno might be the best one. Now, Fitzpatrick had the 2015 season that no one expected, but then he fell off a cliff in 2016. It was bad, right? Aaron Rodgers, they did acquire him, but that version of Aaron, which we saw for 3 plays, then tear his Achilles, come back, not look like the same guy until the games were meaningless at the end of the year. He would be in the conversation, but I mean, you could make the case Geno's the best quarterback the Jets have had since Geno Smith was drafted. Sam Darnold in there, won a Super Bowl a couple of months ago, but went to a number of different teams, the Carolina, San Francisco, Minnesota, before he ends up in a prime spot with the Seahawks. Great roster. Shout out to John Schneider. Great coach in my man Mike McDonald. Great offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak. The roster with JSN and Kenneth Walker, like that was a really, really good team. Rashid Shaheed that they traded for, really, really good team. Just a stout defense. So roster top to bottom was good enough for a quarterback to be inserted and they be a championship contender. And that's not to take away from Sam Darnold, who was awesome last year, who was awesome in his final or his 1 year with the Vikings. But that's a little bit of a different situation. NJ Lauren chimes in, not to mention Chip Kelly, one of the worst OCs in the league. Geno put up 3,900 yards and 19 touchdowns. Chip Kelly ends up getting fired during the season last year. So it was a disaster, and that's what we're going to figure out. How much of the Raiders, not just being bad, but literally being the worst team in football, had to do with Geno Smith. And this was a question that I thought about once I saw the signing. What was this, Tuesday he signed, or the trade? Tuesday. And it was like, if we created a pie chart, what does it look like when we dole out the blame for the Raiders being a disaster? Head coach, roster, general manager, quarterback. What does that look like? And then throw Chip Kelly into the mix. Shout out BQE Kid chiming in. NJ Lauren, 2027 is supposed to have a lot of good quarterbacks. And that is why our appetite for having a good season is not very high. We want to get the quarterback in the 2027 draft. That's what we're looking at. That 2027 draft where the expectation is you are going to have the crop be larger than what it is in this draft. Well, the quarterbacks we thought that could come out, Arch Manning, they will be better. Dante Moore, like these guys will be, after another year in college, more prepared to come into the league. And it's one of the reasons why, if you're a Jet fan, you're like, yo, let's just sim through this thing, get the best pick, and then we'll pull up, get our quarterback. And then because we have a pick high enough to get a quarterback, it means we had a bad season, which also means our coach is gone. And now we can get the better head coach. All right, BQE Kid chimes in. I'm not holding my breath, he means, for 2027. I'll roll with Geno for 2027 too. Ain't gonna happen, man. Ain't gonna happen. Geno Smith is 35 years old, dog. Like, this ain't, look, it would be funny, right, if everyone goes from killing the Jets for the Sam Darnold they called debacle, which was revisionist history. All the people like, man, they should have kept him. It would be quite hilarious if the Jets see a quarterback they drafted go to Seattle after multiple stops elsewhere, win the Super Bowl, and then people are like, oh, okay. So, yeah, there is a possibility. All you have to do is be patient with the young quarterback who we know is talented. Give him chance after chance after chance, and he can deliver it. The funny thing would be if we now end up, and we being the Jets, end up on the receiving end of something like that happening. Something very fortunate where Gino leaves the Jets, goes to the Giants, goes to Seattle, goes to the Raiders, and he comes back to the Jets. And now he's in the AFC Championship game. And at that point, you're right, BQE kid. He's coming back for 2027. But I find it hard to believe that's going to happen, which is why I'm looking ahead to the draft. Number one pick is problematic. If the Jets tank the season, the damage will be immense. Coaching staff gone, no continuity. Great. What was the continuity like in New England when they won 4 games 2 years ago? Oh, okay. So they got to the Super Bowl. Fantastic. What was the continuity like in Chicago when the Bears finished their season by losing 10 of 11 games? And the only reason why it wasn't 11 straight losses to end the season was because they just so happened to play a Green Bay Packers team that had clinched its spot in the postseason. So they were playing their backups. And then the Bears just kind of fell into a win. So for all intents and purposes, they ended their season on a 10-game losing streak. And then this past year, were one play away from getting to an NFC Championship game. Where was the continuity there? How about for Jacksonville and how bad they had been the last couple of years? All of a sudden, Liam Cohen comes in and they get to the playoffs and almost beat Buffalo on the final drive of a game. What was the continuity like there? So I think we sometimes overvalue this whole continuity thing, where, of course, the most ideal spot to be in would be coaching staff all returns, everyone's on the same page, we're high and high-fiving. Great. When you are a bad organization, keep turning it over until you get it right. That's what the Patriots did. That's what the Chicago Bears did. That's what the Jacksonville Jaguars did. And so if I don't believe that Aaron Glenn's the head coach, the hell I care about it doing irreparable damage to him. Want him going anyway. They shouldn't tank. Glenn will be out. Great. Find me where anywhere in that sentence where there's bad news that Glenn's going to be out. I find that to be favorable that Glenn is out. That's fantastic. If you hit them with the deuces at the end of the year, they need to set the team up like 2023 where all they would need is a quarterback. Obviously, man. Because the 2022 season is the one that really is going to sting, right? They were 7-4, that dominant defense, and good weapons, rushing attack. Everything was fine. No one really loved the coach, but we were like, all right, we're doing enough with him to suggest that maybe he can be good one day. 7-4, looked like the playoff drought was about to be over. They lose 6 straight games to end the season. Pitiful. But that team and the fans of that team, including yours truly, rightfully felt we're a quarterback away. Got the quarterback, he tore his Achilles. So yeah, set your team up to where he doesn't come in and have to be the savior. He comes in and just has to do his job. You don't rush the process. You can exude patience and all of those things. That's the ideal place to be in. And I get that from it's counterintuitive, right? To think that like ideally you want to be in that spot, but also you would love to go 1-16 this year, because like how are you in that spot when your roster just showed you they were not good enough to win more than one game? But this is where we are, man. This is where we are, and you're just trying to get the quarterback. If you told me the Jets could get to a spot where at the end of this season we are convinced Aaron Glenn just had an abomination of year one, but he's turned a corner. Like, this dude can coach. He can coach. And the roster is good, but it's not where it needs to be. Otherwise, this team would be headed to the playoffs. And now all of a sudden, all you need is a quarterback and we're off and running. Like, if that's the commentary once the 2026 season is over, sign me up. Sign me up. Because right now I'm rooting for losses. And the reason why I'm rooting for losses is for a couple reasons. I don't think they have the head coach. I don't think this roster is good enough to shock anybody. And they clearly don't have the quarterback. But if you're telling me that miraculously we can get to a point where it's like clear we do have the head coach and we're just a quarterback away, a la 2022, sign me up for that. But I'm not rooting for them to win games because I don't think they have the right head coach. And I don't think that makes me a bad fan. I got called dumb yesterday by Don LaGreca, which, listen, you can have a problem with my stance. You can ultimately disagree with the take without calling me dumb. I'm a lot of things. Dumb won't be any word that anyone uses to describe me. I just find it odd that someone who for years has been telling us meaningless wins at the end of seasons go a long way into helping build a culture for a team, never saw that come to fruition with the team that he roots for. Because all of those meaningless wins the Giants had at the end of seasons somehow never carried over, and it was never momentous enough to solidify that they had the right head coach. Because that head coach who picked up those meaningless wins got his ass fired last year. And the only reason why the Giants and their fans have this explosion of optimism isn't because they won a couple of games at the end of the season, which cost them draft positioning, but it's because they have a head coach who was on the market, who they were then able to corral, and now he has legitimized and stabilized that team. He comes in with credentials. He comes in, the kids say aura, right? And he comes in as a CEO, manning the ship. And yeah, they believe they found their quarterback. So this idea that, those wins are culture builders. It shows people you're going in the right direction. No, the hell it doesn't. No, the hell it doesn't. How did 3 straight years the Houston Texans fired head coaches? They had 3 coaches in 3 years. And in year number 3, they draft CJ Stroud with, who would have guessed this, the number 1 overall pick. They hired DeMeco Ryans, and here's what the last 3 years have looked like for the Texans. So they went from 3 straight years of 3 new head coaches to 3 straight years of making the playoffs and winning a playoff game. How did that change? Oh, they got the right head coach, and they got the quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. How did the fortunes of the Commanders change? Oh, they got Jaden Daniels with the 2nd pick. How did the fortunes of the Bears change? Well, they drafted Caleb Williams with the 1st pick. They realized their head coach just couldn't coach, to quote my man Adam Shine, couldn't coach himself out of a paper bag. They then got the right head coach in the building in Ben Johnson, and then they went to the playoffs and won a playoff game. That's what happened. How about the Patriots? Was it meaningless wins at the end of seasons that showed people they were headed in the right direction? Or was it they drafted Drake May, they realized the coach that he had in his rookie season was an absolute disaster, so they fired him, brought in Vrabel, and all of a sudden you look up there in the Super Bowl. So what's the argument against a fan rooting against a fan rooting for his team to lose games? What's the argument? Because the person clamoring for wins that don't matter doesn't actually have tangible evidence of these wins bleeding into the next season, serving as a jumping off point or serving as momentum. But what we do have are quarterbacks who have drafted their team high, the quarterback or teams who have drafted their quarterback high, and then going on deep playoff runs rather immediately. And so I just don't get it, man. But I guess that makes me dumb. I guess Don LaGreca is just so much smarter than me. BQE Kid, I hate the Raiders. Patriots West. It would be hilarious if we pass on Dante Moore in 2027. Well, he was supposed to enter this year's draft, and then we saw in his final game in the college football playoff, he was, I mean, as bad as you could possibly be at the worst time you could possibly be. At NJ Lauren, depends on how you look at good. Not talking winning season, talking 7 or 8 wins. You can trade up, but there are dangers in viewing it that way. And that's what I'm trying to impart on people. Yes, you have the ammunition to trade up. 3 first-round picks. So you're rooting against the Cowboys. You're rooting against the Colts. And that in combo with your first-round pick could help you move up in the draft. The problem is, if you identify a quarterback or multiple quarterbacks that you like, you are still at the mercy of the teams you're trying to trade up with. And so if you win 7 or 8 games, you're now in the teens. That's a hefty price. So you got to jump multiple teams to get to the quarterback of your liking. And those multiple teams could include ones that also need quarterbacks, also have identified quarterbacks that, like you, they've fallen in love with. And so it's harder than people make it seem. And then those picks that you have, those coveted picks, actually worsen in trade value the better you are. And oh, by the way, because we had a comment earlier about from BQE Kid who said they need to set the team up like 2023. Well, how did that team get as good as it was in that 2022 season? It was by drafting, hitting home runs on draft picks. And so if you're trading away these draft picks that you can use to help your young quarterback, then what good does that do for you? Now, you'll take it because if you've got a franchise quarterback in place, then you just kind of deal with it, right? And you're just like, to quote Les Snead in LA with the Rams, bleed them picks. You'd sign up for that. But the most ideal scenario would be to have your picks, which is why I don't understand. I'll take 7 to 8 wins. I mean, that just puts you in no man's land. Unless you believe they win 7 or 8 games and Geno Smith is fantastic. But he's 35 years old, man. Does anyone believe Geno is going to be the quarterback of the Jets for the next half decade? Like, no one thinks that. And Jay Lauren, as much as I question Glenn, you think Woody will finally get a good head coach? He isn't going to sign Tomlin or an OC. It will be another first-time D coordinator. Well, you're hoping not. You're hoping that the job becomes more attractive. Because, and I believe that there is a chance that Glenn gets fired, Muji stays in place, so he gets to now pick his head coach. And Muji, who's done a really good job with these trades that he has facilitated. So feel good about your general manager, Muji. And I get like that can also be counterintuitive in that if the Jets go 2-15, how do you feel great about the general manager who put together a 2-15 roster? I can point to the fact that maybe the reason why they were so bad was more about the coaching deficiencies than it was about the roster building. So if that scenario unfolds, you have a general manager who you think has been pretty solid, You have 3 first-round picks. You've got all this cap space, and you've got a team that, knowing it needs a quarterback, has identified one in the draft, a can't-miss guy, and they're in line to draft him. So by virtue of all of those things, this becomes an attractive job. Maybe not to Mike Tomlin, because how does Mike Tomlin go from working for the Rooneys to now signing up to work for Woody Johnson? That, to me, defies logic, but it's an attractive job for whoever the hot name is at the moment. And that's what you're hoping for. Bears in New England hire good coaches, win as Woody had good hires. You're right about that. I mean, Woody did hire Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan was a tremendous hire until it expired. There was an expiration date on that. So this does go back to the decision on who to hire at head coach is the biggest one. And, that is something that we can point to and look no further than Aaron Glenn, someone who was not a good head coach, who the Jets hired. Glenn was a bad coach in 2025. He was a rookie. He's had his slice of humble pie. You hope so. Look, if that does show itself at the end of the season, where it's like, man, I just got it wrong. Glenn had an awful year 1, but he drastically improved in year 2. And the Jets are now in a place where he's the head coach of the future. I'll admit I was wrong. I just don't think that that's possible. So go from being as overmatched, game management, clock management, his relationship with the media, the fact that he got his coaching staff. So what do you, 21 coaches got let go? Like that was as bad of a rookie season you can have for a head coach as ever, who ended up keeping his job. That was as bad as you could possibly be for someone who ends up keeping his job. By the way, I don't think Glenn is great, but with Woody as the owner, he'll likely get another bum. So what that tells me is you've just been deprived of any hope. Like, if you don't think it's possible for Woody Johnson to hire a good head coach, then this conversation becomes meaningless, because it also means that you think Glenn is bad, which you're saying you don't think he's great. That's putting it kindly. You think Glenn's a bum because Woody Johnson hires only bums, and he hired Aaron Glenn. So thus you think Aaron Glenn's a bum. This becomes a meaningless conversation. If we draft a quarterback at 1, Woody will force them to start, which will be a disaster. And this is where Woody's got to get smarter. Being heavy-handed, being too involved in the process has never done him well. It's a disservice to the coaches that you've hired. It's a disservice to the general manager that you've hired. It's a disservice to the team. It's a disservice to the fans. Woody Johnson does not know football. Owners should not be getting involved anyway. If you got to talk to him about finances and where to allocate your financial resources, that's one thing. Forcing a team to start a quarterback week 1 just because you've got an inkling is just truly mind-boggling. Who do you replace Aaron Glenn with as head coach in 2027? I need names. Well, I told you, it's a pipe dream. Mike Tomlin. That's a name. It's a pipe dream. I don't think it's going to happen. But maybe he's got an itch to get back. He looks at their situation, 3 first-round picks, finally getting a quarterback that he didn't have his last, what? Because 16 was the last time they won a playoff game with Big Ben. So you could say 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So maybe the last decade, 9 years, he hasn't had a quarterback. They've had, Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett and all these scrubs. What was left of Aaron Rodgers, what was left of Ben Roethlisberger. So maybe Tomlin looks at it and says, the Jets have the first pick in the draft. It's Arch Manning who's going number 1. They also have 3 or 2 other first round picks. They've got cap space. I've got a chance to get back into it. Now, the problem with that logic is they're going to be an abundance of jobs that open up. That will be more attractive. There are going to be so many other jobs that could open up that if you're Tom, then you can say, all right, that's the job I want. And maybe Zach Taylor gets fired. Now, Cincinnati also has bad ownership. But the reason why I bring up the Bengals, in addition to Joe Burrow, obviously, is like a chance to, play the Steelers twice a year. And it's not that the Steelers did him wrong. It was his decision to step down, but he wants to go at Steelers fans who were trying to run him out of town. So maybe that becomes an interesting scenario, right? Maybe for now, this is wild to think about. And it's never gonna happen. But what if Andy Reid decides, all right, it's time to leave this thing here in Kansas City? Now, I don't think it's gonna happen. I think he stays as long as Patrick is in his prime, because you can. Every year you go into a season with a healthy Patrick Mahomes, you are one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. So maybe that doesn't happen, but let's just say like crazier things have gone down, right? Crazier things have gone down. Philadelphia. If Nick Sirianni and the Eagles go one and done in the postseason again, I think he gets fired. That is a perfect place for Mike Tomlin to go. Those crazy fans doesn't have to leave the state of Pennsylvania, so it's a perfect setup for him going to Philadelphia. There was some rumors Green Bay could axe LaFleur, but he got his extension, so I guess that's it's cooked for that. I wonder what's up with Dan Campbell in Detroit. Like if they miss the playoffs again, what happens there? So there are going to be a bunch of teams just going through some of the potential openings, and obviously we're very premature in having this conversation, but that's the one name I'm looking at. I'm looking at Tomlin, and then over the course of a season, man, you see these coordinators that pop, that end up being really good, and I would like an offensive coordinator if I'm going to have one become my head coach, but we'll see other names surface, right? The Marcus Freeman thing. You didn't want to come to the NFL this year. Maybe next year that becomes an option. But Mike Tomlin would be my number one guy. By the way, not saying you were wrong, but tanking another season is too painful to think about. The real problem is Woody. And I don't think the Jets brass should be trying to tank the season. That's not what I was saying. I don't think they should come into it and say, you know what? What's best for us is to just stink. No, you try to win every game. You have to if you are these dudes, Muji and Glenn. Your jobs are on the line. And what would it say about your organization if that's the message you're sending? You're not going to have players respect you. You're not going to have guys want to come play for you. So I am not arguing that the Jet brass should be putting a roster together that is bad enough to where they can go where 0-17 is on the table. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just telling you as a fan what I think would put them in best position to finally get over this hump is a complete shakedown, a complete teardown. Get rid of the head coach. Now we got to see on the general manager because he's made some shrewd moves. But rip this thing down, get the best crack at having your franchise quarterback, and that comes via the first overall pick, and then we can move forward. That's what I'm saying. I that's just as a fan rooting for this. And also, by the way, because there was a throwaway line yesterday, Ty, Rick, and Dave, you guys sound like yo-yo podcasters and sitting in your basement. Which, first of all, man, shout out to all the content creators out there, the podcasters who are just chasing dreams, people looking down on you. Ain't nothing wrong with being a podcaster. Wherever you get your start is where you get your start. There are some great podcasters out here who aren't on the radio, who aren't on television, who are just doing the content creator thing from the crib, starting it from the bottom, like Drake said, right? And I don't think we should disparage those guys. I don't think we should disparage fans as if our words have more credence than people who are doing shows from their living room. We got a lot of educated fans out there. We got a lot of educated people who are part of the media who didn't go to school for media, or, who aren't in locker rooms. They're grinding tape. They're watching interviews. They're putting the work in. So no shade to podcasters out there. Shout out to all the content creators. Woody is awful. He's slightly better than Jim Dolan. I'd say no, absolutely not. You mean the Jim Dolan who hired Leon Rose, and now every year the Knicks are in the playoffs? And now the Knicks, who I think prior to Jalen Brunson getting here, had spent 20 plus years, so since 2000, before Jalen Brunson had gotten here, the Knicks had won a grand total of 3 playoff series. They immediately got to that number and have since doubled that number. Now one of the favorites to win the Houston Conference. I'd say James Dolan's better than Woody Johnson, because the Knicks are now no longer a laughing stock, and credit has to be given to Dolan, who put the right people in place and who is now like taking a step back and say, all right, boys, do what you got to do, handle business. If y'all need me, I'm here. I'm going to holler at y'all, but I will arm you with all of the assets, with all of the resources you need to get the job done. And I'm going to take a step back and let my basketball people handle my basketball things. All right? Dolan is higher on the power rankings as far as owners than Woody Johnson. And the season wins can't be more meaningless. Jets drafted Zach Wilson after firing Gates. How did that go? Coaches change with Woody, generally going from bad to worse. I'm not disagreeing with this point, but I've got to have some hope, right? I've got to believe that at some point the Jets will stumble into a head coach. They will stumble into a quarterback. I have to believe that. As a diehard football fan, as a diehard Jet fan who watches every single second of every single quarter, whether they're 7-4, they're 10-5. I know it's very rare, or they're 2-14. I am consuming every minute of every game of this football team, and I will do so, God willing, the rest of my life. I have to believe that they are at some point going to figure this thing out. And so in the moments, in the years, decades leading up to that, I am trying to, in my mind, put together what the blueprint for getting there looks like. That's what I'm saying. If you've lost all hope, you've been beaten, and it's like casket in the tomb, pour the dirt on you, I understand. But what I am doing is carving out what the picture looks like if we are to ever get back to being relevant. That's what I'm saying. Again, not arguing that having a higher pick isn't valuable. Your points are valid, but to be honest, I would rather they're able to draft a quarterback deeper this year and make that work. I know fanciful. Totally agree. But tell me the quarterbacks. Because here's the thing. Here's what I will tell you. Ty Simpson, who might be there at 16. Last time I checked the odds, the Jets were favored to land him at that spot. I watched him for half the year be bad. And he can say nagging injuries. He had some health issues that caused him to lose 30 pounds. And that might all be valid. Last we saw Ty Simpson, he wasn't very good. He's got 15 starts in his collegiate career. The history tells us those guys don't succeed, and we have so much evidence going against history being bucked by the Jets. It's like, well, all the years leading up to this, we saw what the number said. You're drawing dead if you're a guy with 15 career starts. But ultimately, it was the Jets who kind of hacked the system. The Jets cracked the code. And I find it hard to believe that. But your argument is the one that is legitimate and one we saw in real time with the Giants last year, getting their quarterback late. It's one we have seen with other teams, like the Ravens with Lamar, or you can even say the Chiefs with Mahomes, that getting the quarterback a little bit later. But those teams were just better at the point when they drafted those quarterbacks. And obviously, the head coaches they had in place. I mean, compare those guys to Aaron Glenn. Like, what are we even talking about? Rex was good with Mangini's team once he was in charge and went bad. Fair. I don't even know if I'm going to say this, but I think Eric Mangini would agree with that. Can we not mention Zach Wilson? Sure. Not. We won't mention him after you just mentioned him. So you almost have me pushing the tank. I just want some fun game. You're going to get a lot of fun games with Geno Smith. I tell you that much. Geno is going to be an entertaining quarterback to watch because there are going to be some days where he looks awesome, and then some days where it's like, wait, is that the worst quarterback in football? I think you're going to get a lot of that. Frank Wright is a respected offensive mind, so they now have an adult in that room who knows what he's doing and who has a plan that best he can will be executed, and has a quarterback who we have seen in recent memory, in recent history, be able to deliver and be productive on some good teams. So the combination of maybe Geno gets back to what he was in prior seasons with the Seahawks. You now have Frank Reich. They're going to draft a receiver. They have A.D. Mitchell, Garrett Wilson. You get Brees Hall locked up. You got my man Braylon Allen coming back from injury. The offensive line is one of the strengths of the team. It's one of the good things Joe Douglas did, right? And the Mimble last year, Muji's pick. So I think it can be a fun season. I will tell you, I find it hard to believe at this point, assuming injury doesn't rear its ugly head, we are going to, as we did many times last year, post game be like, yo, did that set football back 50 years? With how embarrassing of an offensive performance that was, I just think that the Jets need to be taken off of television. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll be a fun group. They've improved on defense. They've added some leadership to that room. They've incorporated some impact players, low risk, high reward, a lot of 1-year deals, a lot of guys who maybe didn't pop from a statistic standpoint last year, but I think Aaron Glenn is kind of, hoping that ceilings can be reached through coaching. Like, Nashawn Wright was a home run or bust guy. He was tied for the league in interceptions with 5, but also the metrics would tell you was just awful in coverage. He got smoked a lot. And so Aaron Glenn in his mind probably feels like, all right, we'll take the highs and we'll eliminate the lows because coaching is going to fix that. Joseph Asai, he comes in on that defensive line trying to help the Jets, who we know just did not get to the quarterback last year. They were tied for the second fewest with 26. So he's here on a 3-year, $22 million guaranteed deal to try to shore up that defensive line. You had the 2 tackles, Onyemata and Sweat, that they added to that line, trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick, adding Demario Davis. I mentioned the veteran leadership that you bring in. Now, the question obviously is with them, are their best days behind them? We shall see, but they add credibility to this locker room. And I was talking to Rich Amini the other day on this show, and he mentioned that they just didn't have leadership. They didn't have voices, guys who could galvanize the group. And it just felt like, I don't know if quit was the right word, but they weren't playing for each other. Like, they just kind of lost their way. And so you bring in these new faces that are going to help kind of rectify that situation. A makeover was needed. They've done that. The worry that I have, again, is you are asking some of these guys to outperform, and this is a phrase used in baseball, the back of their baseball cards. And in this instance, it would be to outperform the back of their football cards. But if Aaron Glenn is the defensive mastermind that Woody Johnson thought he was when he hired him. This should be an improved defense. The offense with Frank Reich and Geno Smith should be better, and maybe you'll have a team more fun to watch. Obviously, no one's picking them to win the Super Bowl. No one's going to pick them to get to the playoffs, but and I guess this is not saying a lot, they should be a much improved team. One note, it isn't because Woody has an inkling. Woody and Jaime are looking for the grift to make the splash to get fans to buy tickets. So as I say, if fans are going to buy tickets anyway, they're going to keep increasing them ticket prices up. That's the grift right there, man. Your team can miss the playoffs for 15 straight years, and those ticket prices keep going up. I think that's insane. Tomlin will Tomlin will have his pick of teams. He won't put up with Woody. O'Connell's on the hot seat. McCarthy ruined him. I think the Vikings are going to be good this year. I think that if Kyler is healthy, you are going to see the Vikings with Kevin O'Connell, who I think is a great offensive coach, those weapons and that on that team improve drastically. Now, is it good enough to get them to the playoffs? Maybe not, because that division is brutal. You now, on top of having the Packers and the Lions to worry about, Chicago was better than all those teams last year, right? Got further in the playoffs than all of them. So it's going to be tough having 6 games in what might be the toughest division in the sport. But I think Kyler, as long as he stays healthy, will be good enough. If Sam Darnold was great for them, and Kyler Murray is more talented than Sam Darnold, they'll be good. Is it good enough to keep his job? Maybe not. And I guess as a Jet fan, you should be rooting against them, right? Because that then becomes another option. But sure, if he's fired, then you go grab him. BQE kid O'Connell isn't going anywhere. There was some rumors. There was some rumors that he could be gone this past offseason. So I would say that's not true. By the way, Ty, hopefully this doesn't sound like me mocking you as a fan. What you're saying makes me sense. Love you on the radio. You give good snark when it was required. I appreciate the love. Nah, I love the back and forth. Listen, I don't shy away, and people know this. I love a good debate, man. So if you disagree with my take, pull up. I'm all for the smoke. Have a nice little back and forth. I like being challenged. I like having my logic deepened. I was listening to Max Kellerman on Bill Simmons' podcast, and it was funny. He used, it's like, if I'm proven wrong, it's not that I'm wrong. It's that the logic that I have has been deepened. You're not gonna out logic me. It was just funny. But anyway, yeah, if you have some takes that you want to get ringing off here, that you feel disagree with mine, I welcome that. I don't take that offensively, man. I'm not one of these sensitive people on here who get all up in knots because people don't agree with what I'm saying. We keep it respectful. That's cool. I also, and you can say this is a little bit arrogant, but there is a part of my brain that feels like if someone disagrees with me, it's because I'm not doing a good enough job articulating myself, because I'm right. I just have to get you to see that I'm right. And so if you're disagreeing, it's because I have to do a better job of showing you that I'm right, and then you'll agree that I'm right once you understand where I'm coming from. Right? So there's a little bit of arrogance there, but yeah, I appreciate the back and forth, and I appreciate the love as well. Been around this team for 58 years. You've been bruised, man. You've been beaten. I understand. I give no credit to Dolan. So that would be unfair, and this is one of those rules we got to follow. It's one of those rules we got to follow, and it's appropriate you bring up Dolan. It's similar to how I feel about the Nick conversation. When they lose, when they're in an 11-game stretch, 2-9, we crush them. It's only fair that then when they rattle off 9 straight wins, we give them credit. Fair is fair. If we're gonna have the energy and the smoke for you when you're bad, when things turn around and you start to perform well, we got to give you credit. That's only fair. And so with Dolan, he deserves credit. Who hired Leon Rose? It was him. Who hired Tom Thibodeau? That actually started this turnaround. It was him. Now, you can criticize him for firing Tom after the most successful season in 25 years. We'll have that conversation 6 weeks from now. But when things turned around, you directly point to the cornerstone pieces like Tibbs, like Leon, like Jalen. He's got to sign off on giving Jalen Brunson that massive contract, especially when people like myself did not agree with it. And that's why I feel like you have to, and if you are trying to have this conversation fairly, give credit where it is deserved and where it's warranted. And because we have seen a turnaround from what was a laughing stock of an organization, you just got to show them some love. That's all I'm saying. 58 years, you got me beat. Yeah, that's a long time. The fast count chimes in. They can get a good coach if they are in position to get the quarterback. They have 3 firsts. They don't need number 1 next year to get one. And the point I was making is, yes, 3 first-round picks, awesome. I would, in a perfect world, like to have the quarterback taken with the first pick in the draft, and then still, in addition to that, have 2 other first-round picks so that I can use those to help build the rest of the team. If I'm trading all of those picks for a quarterback, that is an asset I'm losing out on. I would do it, obviously, if the quarterback is someone I feel is great and is going to help me get to where I want to be. And the Jets haven't had a franchise quarterback my entire life. So I do it, but I'm just making the point. The best of both worlds would be to be able to get the quarterback and still have those picks by not having to trade up to get them. We can't, and Jay Lawrence says, draft a quarterback this year at 2 or 16. What do you affect? They're not taking a quarterback at 2. That's not going to happen. I would pencil that in, that they will not take a quarterback at 2. 16 is on the table. The way you describe Geno sounds like Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick, man, he hustled us hard. Y'all remember after the 2015 season, the Jets played hardball with Fitzpatrick during the contract negotiations. And there was like that dispute, standoff. He didn't get signed until very, very late. And then he came out because he had all a lot of the leverage because of the season he had in 2015. But the Jets are like, yo, we've seen you do this before. And that meltdown in week 17 wasn't going to help your cause. And then he proved all of us who had reservations to be correct because he was just awful in that 2016 year. So he swiped us. He swiped us. That was a jig right there. Picked us clean. Picked our pockets clean. Kevin's record 96. I think the ceiling for the next year is 5 wins. If we're being for real, we're building from 1 win. Other 2 were due to historic special teams. Have to expect a regression to some sort next year. Yeah, right. So you beat 3 backup quarterbacks last season. That is the story of your year. You beat 3 backup quarterbacks. You beat Dylan Gabriel. You beat Kirk Cousins. And then you beat who was the Bengals quarterback in it? Why am I blanking? Was it Joe Flacco? Joe Flacco was the Bengals quarterback, right? Why am I blanking? I see the waters get muddied. Why am I blanking on that? I think, if I remember correctly, Flacco. Yeah, it was Flacco who was the Bengals quarterback. So you beat Dylan Gabriel, you beat Joe Flacco, and you beat Kirk Cousins in the cold. So yeah, not a lot to build on. NJ Lawrence says, I'll give you my hope. My hope with Glenn is he's focusing on the D. Reich, in a sense, becomes head coach. Pause. Especially making game time decisions. I know, kind of sad, but it's a glimmer of hope to me. And that's the point I made. Frank Reich gives you what you didn't have last year. Tanner Engstrand was just kind of in over his head. I thought it was also unfair to really judge him based on what we had seen. Didn't have a quarterback. His best weapon on offense and Garrett Wilson got hurt. Like there was just a lot happening. I just didn't know with my untrained football eye how much I could blame him for. Now a lot of people were just like, "Yo, what you can blame him for is the fact that Brees Hall isn't more involved in the offense. Like get him in the passing attack, have him on the field on third down. Those are legitimate, but just like to fully encapsulate the picture of what Engstrand brought to the table, I thought we could not do devoid of him having a quarterback who wasn't the worst in football. Good coaches elevate players. Saleh as a defensive coordinator was great at that. As a fan, we were all trying to find something to grab onto that isn't Glenn's towel loaded with dog poop. I am convinced with Dolan they finally got his meds right. We don't want to be doing that. Having fun with like other people's like we don't want to do that. Engstrand and Fields utter mismatch. I agree. Listen, I'm rooting for losses next year. That does not make me a bad fan. I have zero confidence in this head coach who I watched last year. Proctor, one of the worst teams I've ever seen, one of the worst teams I've ever rooted for. And as a defensive guy, to go an entire season without an interception is an utter embarrassment. The amount of times I watched him botch clock and game management, I can't unsee. I did not love his spats unnecessarily with the media. It just didn't make any sense. And we have now seen that 3 of the most important positions in team building he got wrong. His quarterback, epic fail. His defensive coordinator didn't even last the entire season. That was a disaster. And he then, though too late for my liking, got rid of his offensive coordinator. Those guys, those 3 guys, hand selected by this head coach, all were Fs last year. And then he himself was an F. And so if you're asking me, do I think he's going to turn it around? The answer, if I'm being fair based on the evidence, has to be a resounding no, which is why, no, I am rooting against them winning games because I don't think he's good. And I want to see them have their best crack at getting a quarterback. That doesn't make me a bad fan, despite some of the silliness I heard yesterday. But I guess that makes me dumb, right? G Sing 22. We have a harder schedule this year, so even if the team gets better, our record might still be really bad and he gets fired. I don't see him surviving the year. The Jets play the AFC West and they play the NFC North, I believe, right? The Jets play the AFC West and the NFC North. I believe I have that correct. Jets, we can double check that real quick. 2026 schedule. And that would be correct. NFC North, AFC West. You're not beating Buffalo. You're not beating New England. 4 L's right there. What's happening in Miami? Who knows? Best you can do is split. You're not going to Arrowhead, or they don't call it Arrowhead anymore. What do they call Kansas City? What do they call the KC Stadium now? It's no longer Arrowhead. It's I have it like right on the tip of my tongue. Giha Field at Arrowhead Stadium. So it still has Arrowhead in it. But you're not going to Arrowhead and winning. You're not going to Chicago and winning. You're not going to Detroit and winning. Oh, a nice little revenge game for Robert Saleh. I think they'll be really good. So the wins, where are they coming from? The Browns, maybe. 1 Dolphin game. You're not beating the Chargers. Maybe the Cardinals. So I see 3 wins, if that, on the schedule. So they're going to be a 3-win team, even if they're not tanking. That's fine. That's fine. 3-win team, get the number 1 overall pick. Let's get it popping. Glenn's arrogance, didn't love it. Concern acted like he had a week. He had won 3 Super Bowls in Detroit. Yeah, I 100% agree. Yo, hit me on Twitter, if you got social media, Twitter at Ty D Butler. I'm putting these videos out on TikTok at Ty D Butler, Instagram as well. Subscribe to the YouTube page. I appreciate all the engagement and interaction today. This was mad fun. You guys showed love. Once again, head to my Twitter profile. At the top, you will see I'm raising money for the Sips and Kicks Foundation. Running the New York City half marathon on Sunday should be fun. We're going from Prospect Park to Central Park. So if you get an opportunity to head to my Twitter profile where I am engaged in a foundation helping raise money for kids in need. Sips and Kicks Foundation. Click the link. No donation is too small. So get after it there. I appreciate you guys. Shout out to you, man. Shout out to you guys. Shout out NJ Lauren. Have a good one, Ty. Appreciate the love. Great stuff today. We'll be back. If something big happens today, or if not, we will reconvene on Monday. Have a great weekend, y'all. Deuces, peace and love. Holla at your boy.